Living together was supposed to be a new chapter, a step forward in our relationship. But from the very first week, subtle tensions began to emerge. I had imagined mornings filled with shared coffee, evenings spent planning dinners together, laughter over small chores. Instead, I was met with resistance over the simplest tasks. One evening, I asked Emma, my partner of 3 years, to help with groceries. "Just grab a few things while you're out?" I suggested casually. She scoffed, a sharp laugh that felt more like a dismissal than amusement. "Seriously? You want me to do that too?" Her tone made it clear that even this small request was an inconvenience, an imposition on her personal space. I paused, stunned, trying to read whether this was playful exaggeration or genuine irritation. But the way she rolled her eyes, the subtle tilt of her head, the sigh that followed, it all added up. It wasn't just groceries. It was every little expectation I had carried into this cohabitation. Shared chores, mutual planning, even just keeping each other informed about daily schedules. Everything seemed to trigger subtle friction. At first, I thought it was adjustment, the normal turbulence that comes with moving in together. But over the days, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Each request, no matter how reasonable, was met with a grunt, a scoff, or a dismissive shrug. I started observing closely. When I mentioned a minor inconvenience, she dismissed it. When I asked for help with planning, she found a way to make it feel like a burden. I realized that living together wasn't the shared partnership I had envisioned. It was a one-sided arrangement where my contributions were expected, but hers were optional. By the end of the week, I felt a mix of frustration, confusion, and exhaustion. The apartment, which should have been a shared space of comfort, now felt like a battleground. And in the quiet moments, when she was out of the room, I caught myself thinking about boundaries, fairness, and the growing sense that perhaps the step forward in our relationship was revealing more truths than I had anticipated. The following days only made it clearer. I tried to approach Emma with patience, hoping conversation could help. "Can we figure out a schedule?" I suggested gently one evening, pointing to the stack of unopened mail and the overflowing kitchen trash. She paused, clearly annoyed, then said, "A schedule? Seriously? We live together, not run a hotel." Her words stung more than I expected. I wanted partnership, not sarcasm disguised as honesty. I began documenting small incidents in my mind, little flashes of irritation, moments where cooperation should have been natural but wasn't. Grocery runs turned into silent arguments, laundry became a subtle contest of who cared more, and even deciding what to eat for dinner escalated into tension. Each disagreement, each scoff, chipped away at the image I had built of shared life. By midweek, I realized that this wasn't just about chores. It was about respect, about recognition, about acknowledging that living together requires empathy, compromise, and mutual effort. Emma seemed unwilling, or perhaps unable, to see it that way. Each conversation felt like a minefield. One misstep, one question, and the tension would spike. One night, as I washed dishes alone, I thought back to our early relationship. The laughter, the long walks, the shared jokes, they seemed like another life. How had it shifted so drastically? I wondered if this was the side of her I had never seen. The version that emerged when comfort removed the filter of dating rituals and polite boundaries. And with that realization came an uneasy clarity. Perhaps living together wasn't just revealing differences. It was exposing incompatibilities I hadn't noticed before. I started making small adjustments. I limited my expectations, tried not to ask for help unless absolutely necessary, and learned to navigate the apartment as if I were alone in spirit. Yet in those quiet moments, I felt the growing weight of disappointment. It wasn't anger that defined these nights. It was the quiet ache of unmet expectations, a gnawing sense that the life I had envisioned with her was slowly slipping through my fingers. By the end of the week, I made a decision I hadn't fully anticipated. Living together, I realized, wasn't just about sharing a space. It was about sharing responsibility, respect, and consideration. And if those elements couldn't coexist, the environment became toxic, even in small ways. Emma's scoffs, once minor irritations, had accumulated into a pattern that made me question not just our living arrangement, but the foundation of our relationship itself. One evening, she asked if I could pick up a few groceries after work. I paused, considering her tone, her previous dismissals, and the subtle lack of acknowledgement for the efforts I had already made. "Actually, I'll handle it myself," I said calmly, setting a boundary I hadn't expressed before. She looked surprised, almost indignant, as if the world had shifted unexpectedly. But that moment was liberating. It wasn't confrontation, it was clarity. I realized that I could no longer navigate this relationship at the cost of my own dignity and sanity. The next few days became a test of equilibrium. I found myself moving through the apartment differently, asserting my space, setting limits on what I would tolerate, and paying attention to my own comfort rather than trying to negotiate hers at every turn. Meals were cooked, chores done, but now with a mindset of self-respect rather than quiet endurance. And with that shift, a subtle transformation occurred. The weight of constant irritation lifted, replaced by a quiet confidence that my boundaries were valid, my needs important. Emma noticed the change, though she didn't confront it directly. Her scoffs became less frequent, her dismissive remarks quieter. I didn't celebrate her adjustment or expect gratitude. This wasn't about forcing her to change. It was about reclaiming my space, asserting my expectations, and acknowledging that living together wasn't simply a convenience. It was a commitment requiring balance. By the weekend, I felt a sense of clarity that hadn't existed before. Living together had not been what I expected, but the experience forced me to recognize what I truly valued: respect, reciprocity, and autonomy. Emma's reactions, her initial scoffs, had inadvertently revealed the truth about our compatibility and the importance of boundaries in shared life. And as I settled into the apartment that now felt like my own, I understood a vital lesson. Cohabitation isn't just about proximity, it's about presence, effort, and mutual regard. Without those, even love can feel distant.